everybody. My name is Laura Bejarano, and my partner in crime, Nayely Figueroa. We facilitated the first intermediate Excel workshop last Wednesday. We are Excel super users, and we wanted to share some knowledge of this amazing tool. We are glad that you enjoy it. Because of such amazing participation, we decided to include more tips in our recording. Therefore, you will find more information. So stay until the end. Also, we want to say thank you to Hispanotech for facilitating the platform to make this workshop real. Thank you for watching us and hope you learn a lot. Now, Nayely will show you some great tips.
Thank you, Laura. We'll start first with text to columns. And the first thing that you need to know is when you receive a file, sometimes the data that you have is in one same cell, but you need it separate. So what you need to do here is first understand how many values are in your cell. So we have here the last name, and we also have a first name. Last name Brown, first name Carla. If someone told you, please sort this information alphabetically by first name, you wouldn't be able to do it because the first name comes after the last name. But what you can do is split this cell into its two different values and then do the sorting. So first of all, you need to understand how many values come out from this cell. So here we have last name and then first name. So we have two. So you add two columns. Once you add the two columns, you select all the cells that you need to separate, and then you go to Data, Text to Columns, and you will see two options. For now, let's just use delimited. Delimited says characters such as commas or tabs separate each field. So the characters that we have here that are separating our fields are a comma and also a space. So we select delimited, and then we click Next. What you normally will see when you enter here is that tab is selected by default. What you need to do is unselect the tab and make sure that you select the characters that are separating your text. So in this case, we have a comma separating it and also a space. So notice when I hit space, the space from this second column disappears. If I uncheck, there's a space here. When I check this, it disappears. So I click Next. And then you need to decide what the data format would be for the new columns that will be created. Normally, general is okay. General, what it does is that numeric values are converted directly into numbers and dates as dates, and then the rest of the values are just taken as regular text. So normally, general is okay for both columns. And then the other thing that you need to decide is where the information will live once you break it up. So here what it says is that the information will be in column A and row 4. So column A and row 4. But if we want to keep the information that we already have, what we need to do is make sure that instead of saying A4, we put it at the side in maybe column B and row 4. And then we click Finish. So once we click Finish, we see that all our data is still here. And the only thing that we need to do now is put the titles here, last name, first name, and now we have our data that we can sort by first name. The other thing that we can do is also separate in another way. So when you go to Data and you go to Text to Columns, the other option that we saw was Fixed Width. And what it says is fields are aligned in columns with spaces between each field. So what it means is, for instance, if you take a look at our data, we have 3 numbers and then a space, then 3 numbers, a space, 4 numbers, and that's it. So everything is formatted exactly the same. It has the same fixed width. So this is the other way that you can separate your data. So when you click Next, you will see that this is separating it into 3 columns. But if you only want to have one column with the area code and then the rest of the phone number, You can get rid of the third column by just clicking this line twice. Whoops. If you want to put it back again, you click once. To take it out, you click twice. So click twice on the line and then it'll go away. The next thing you need to do is just click next. Again, general is okay. And you need to decide if you want to keep your original information or if you want the original to stay as is and then have the new information in the other columns. So for this example, let's disappear what we already have here. We'll click finish and then you see that we have the area code and then we have the phone number. So this is the way that you do text to columns and the way that you can separate information based on either characters or fixed width. Let's move to data validation. So data validation is a great tool as well. When, for instance, you cannot, someone else is doing the input of the information. So say that you ask people to enter what their status is in Canada. And some of them said, I'm a PR, I'm a permanent resident, I'm a citizen, I'm a Canadian, etc. And so you have a lot of information that now is not the same or it's not standardized. So in order to avoid this, there is an option called data validation in Excel so that you can only give specific options to people of what they can choose for that cell. So instead of having PR, permanent resident, citizen, Canadian, etc., you give them the options. So for this, what you need to do is first, you need to create a new tab. So you come here and you say, this will be my list, for instance, and I create here my status. And my status will be permanent resident, citizen, and work permit. I go back to my data validation or where I have the data. And what I do is I select all the cells where I need the data validation to live. So once I have them selected, I go to data validation. If you see here in the box right now, it says allow any value. So they can put formulas, numbers, text, etc. But you don't want that. You only want them to choose from the list that you created. So you choose list. And the source will be the tab, so here down, the tab that you just created, and you only select the choices that they would be able to select. So don't choose status. Status is the title, and it's just for you to know what the title of your information is. So only choose the options that they will need. Then you click OK. And if you see now, we have this little thingy that appeared in all of the cells. So now when they go in, they will be able to see the options and just select the ones that apply to them. So they can say, oh, okay, well, I'm a citizen. Oh, okay, well, I'm a PR, etc. And now you don't have the problem of someone entering Canadian because the program won't let them. The other way that we can validate data as well is, for instance, think that the company has been has existed for 5 years and that's it. So you're asking people, please let me know what your seniority is. How many years have you been in this company? So you can also do that with data validation. So you can go to data validation and instead of any value, just making sure that it is a whole number. So the whole number, you want it to be between 1 and 5. And you click OK. So now people can put here 1, 3, 4, and if they click 7, the system won't let them. The other thing that you can do is this message is very generic and it doesn't tell you much. It's very confusing sometimes. So you can also make sure to change your data, your error message so that it says something that that talks to the people that is inputting the information. So when you go to data validation, you choose, yes, your whole number, you put 1 and maximum of 5, but you can also change your error alert. So you can put here, input values between 1 and 5. So when you create your data validation and they put 7, they see an error message that is the one that you want them to see. And it says input values between 1 and 5. So you're giving more information to the person of the type of values that you are actually looking to see in that column. The other thing that you can do, and there are many options here in data validation, but the other one that we will see is the number of characters. So when you click on data validation, again, let me clear this. It says any value. So instead of any value, we want to use text length. So text length should be equal to 3. So 3 characters. And the reason why we want this is because airport codes normally have 3 characters. So when we click OK, we can say, okay, so Carla is arriving from the airport. Why is that? And then this from Max, this from LA or Beijing or whatever. And if we want to input something else, like it's 4 characters long, it won't let us. So now we have our validation for 3 characters. Also, a good practice is always to have your lists in a different tab, because even though you can create them here, if for some reason a user mistakenly erases one of the options of the list, then it will no longer be available in here. So it's always better to have it as a separate tab. Let's move on to conditional formatting. So conditional formatting, let's think here that we have students that took a test and they either passed the test or they didn't, and we can see their scores as well. So for instance, we have yes, no's, and we have all the grades here. But if we want this in a more visual way, we can use conditional formatting. So what you do is you select the cells where you want the conditional formatting to be, and then you choose conditional formatting. You can choose either new rule, but if you are adding more than one, I would say go directly to manage rules. You click there and you say, I want a new rule. And the rule would be Excel format only the cells that contain, and we tell them, okay, search for the cell values that equal to, and we say yes. Once you find the cells that say yes, then format them to have this green color, and you click OK. So all the cells that have the yes will be formatted to this green color. The other thing is, for this rule, I typed directly the yes, but another thing that you can do is have these boxes here and just select them from there. So you can create a new rule and just say format only cells that contain, and you change again cell value equals to, and instead of typing directly no, what you can do is just first click here and then click here. And now everything that is equal to this no, you format in another color. So okay. So now we have our 2 formats. When we apply, we see that everything here changed. So there are people that passed, there are people that didn't, and now we see who are in red and who have the green colors. The other way of formatting is, again, choose the scores. And when you go to conditional formatting, you can say, okay, add a new rule. So the rule would say format all cells based on their values. And here we see a 2-color scale. So instead of 2 colors, let's select 3. And what this will do is that the lowest values will be in the deepest red. The maximum values will have a deeper green color. And then the ones in the middle would have more of a yellow color. So when you click OK, you will see that, for instance, this person that got a 99 has a very deep green color. And then we have this person that had a 10 in a very deep red. So that's also something that you can do. Or you again can choose from these boxes and just say conditional formatting, manage rules, new rule, format my cell values that are between 0 and 69 to be really red. Okay, give me a new rule where you format this values that are between 70 and 79 with a yellow. And then a new rule that says format cells that are between 80 and 100 to be in green. So when you click apply, you will see that you only had one person here that fell in the median values of 70 or 79. But the beauty of having a table like this is that if you change a value in here, then the table will automatically respond to those values. So for instance, say that this is 59 now, and now this is 60. So now everything that falls between 60 and 79 will have a yellow color. So that is conditional formatting. F5 blanks. For instance, when you have a table here and you want to see all of the people that are in a branch, this is a problem because you have all the cells merged. This is a merged, has merged a lot of cells. So instead of saying that Chandler and Brenda and Jessica and all of these people are in the branch, when you filter this, you're only able to see one of the values. So in order to actually see all of the people that are in the branch, what you need to do is unmerge this. So you select all of these cells that have been merged and you click here. So you go to home and you unmerge by clicking. Now that everything there is selected, the other thing that you want to do is press your F5 button on your keyboard. So this is the key that you need to press, F5. So once you press F5, this box will pop up. You can go to special. And now you say, I want only blank cells to be selected. And you click OK. And now you will see that only the cells that do not have information on it have been now selected. Without clicking or doing anything with your mouse, now you will do a plus sign or an equal sign. It's the same. And with the up arrow, so again, looking at our keyboard, you use your up arrow. You will go there to Toronto or to the value that you have at the top. And now you press Control Enter. And what it will do is that it will replicate the value from the cell above it. So now all of your cells that were blank have now information. If you take a look at it, it says, okay, this cell equals this one, this cell is the same as this one, this cell is the same as this one. So this is a very quick way to populate your table whenever you need to do so. So you just use F5. The other thing is remember always to convert to values. So don't keep it as formulas. And then you paste as values. So now this says branch, 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 headquarters, Canada, instead of being a formula. And now when you, of course, want to sort this, you will see that everyone that is in a branch now appears here because now every one of your rows has a value. Again, here, if you notice our table, there are values that are hidden. So if you see rows 10 to 35 are hidden, if we unhide them, we'll see that we have values here that say branch and headquarters and etc. So let's keep this as is. What we know is that everyone that is in Toronto should be in the headquarters, but this says branch. So we need to correct this information. So to do this, you could say, okay, so why don't I just pull this, and now there, it says headquarters, and now we see that Toronto, Canada headquarters, everyone's happy. But when you unhide the information, you will see that everything in there now says headquarters. So this is a problem when you have information that is hidden. So in order to avoid this, you can use F5. So first you select the cells that you know you will need to change. You go to this F5 button. When you press it, you will get the box. You click on special. You say visible cells only. So now everything that is between the rows 10 and 35, Excel will ignore them. And you click OK. And now you can go ahead and just type headquarters. Control Enter, so it replicates on the rest of the cells that are selected. You can change the color as well. And now when you open this to see what happened to those cells that are hidden there, you will see that you still have your branches. So your information is safe because you were only able to work with the cells that were visible. Concatenate and substitute are two formulas that are also very useful. If you remember on the first section of our tutorial, what we saw was text to columns. And text to columns, what we did is we had in one same cell the full name of a person, so first name, last name. And what we did is with text to columns, we created two columns. One had the first name and the other one had the last name. So we separated this two values that we had in one same cell into two columns. Here with concatenate, what you do is you join them. So it's exactly the opposite. And you can use it for a lot of things. But for now, let's do the full name exercise. So the first thing is you add your plus sign or your equal sign. You do concatenate. You choose the first value that you would like to join with the other one. For this one, let's do the first name Carla, so our value on D3, then add a comma, and then you need to add your quotation marks. Now, make sure you have a space within your quotation marks so that this is reflected once your cell is complete. The other thing that you need to do is add a comma again and just specify what is the other value that you want to join. So for this one, we'll do column E and row 3, which is brown. So now what this should return is the value on D3 separated by a space and then the value on E3. So now we have Carla Brown in one same cell. And this can be replicated to the rest of the table. You see here that now instead of having these two values separate, we have it in one cell. Carla Brown, John Williams, Jessica, etc. For the location, we will do the same. You have to add your plus sign or your equal sign. It's the same. And choose concatenate. And now you go to the city. So for instance, this is value B3, which is Toronto. And then if you want to add a comma, you need to put that text in quotation marks. So you do the quotation mark, comma, quotation mark. And now what you will do is separate this text. You want to add a space. So now what you need to do is again, a quotation mark, add your space, close the quotation mark. Now do a comma and bring back the country. So select A3. You close your parenthesis. And now you should be able to see, oh, we have Toronto, we have the comma, the space, and the country. You can replicate this to the rest of the cells and it'll do the same for you. So we have Miami, USA, and Berlin, Germany, etc. And it's all joined together with a comma and a space. So concatenate is what it does. If you have cells that you need to join, then you use concatenate and it will put them together into one same cell. The other value that is also very useful is substitute. So imagine that instead of saying headquarters, we want this to say HQ. And instead of doing this manually, we can do this using a formula. So we use substitute, and we say if you find in cell C3 the text headquarters, then change it to HQ. Okay, so it did, correct? So when Excel went and searched in cell C3 for the text headquarters, it did find it. So it changed the full thing to HQ. When you replicate this to the rest of the cells, Excel, when it looks at cell number C4, it says, okay, search in cell C4, and if you find headquarters, change it to HQ. Well, C4 says branch, so it didn't find it, and therefore the information stayed the same. So now this is a quick fix if you have something that you misspelled in several cells, or if there's something that you need to change, you can do that very easily with substitute. You can also change sections of text. So for instance, instead of saying, okay, substitute, find in this cell C3, if you find the word head, then just bring back an H. And now you see, instead of saying headquarters, it says H quarters, because only the section head was changed here to H. And again, you can replicate this to the rest of your cells, and you will see that the change was made. So it's a great way to substitute sections of your text easily and very fast. These are quite straightforward. So even the name of the formula tells you what it will do. Here in columns A, B, C, what we have is the number of the student, the grade that that student achieved, and then the country where they are from. Max, you just type it as is, and you search for the full set of grades, so in that full column. And when you close the parenthesis, it will tell you the maximum number that I found, or the maximum grade here in this column B was 99.6. You can also do max and just select the full column, and it will bring back the value, 99.6. In MIM, you can do the same. You can say, now search for the lowest value. So you select the full column, and it will bring back a 33.8. So that should be the lowest value in here. Average, again, it's a formula that we know. So it's average all of the grades that are here, and you can select a section, or you can just click directly on letter B to get back the average. For now, we'll just select the cells, and it gives you an 80.79. Some, I don't think you would normally add up all of the grades, but maybe if you want to do the average manually, you could. But for now, just to see how this works, you do the sum, and again, you sum all of these up, and it will give you 8,079.1. Again, remember, you can just choose column B, and it will do exactly the same thing, 8,079.1. I wanted to show you two different formulas. So one of them is count, and the other one is count A. The basic difference between them is that count will only count the number of cells that have numbers, and then count A will count everything that is not empty, or everything that has a value in it. And we will see this, and it will be more clear once we do the exercise. So first you do the count, and you select all of these. It brings back the count of all of these was 100. And yes, we have 100 values here. So this is correct. It's counting it correctly. So for count A, again, what we do is we choose sections that we need. And it returns again 100. So you do not see the difference right now. But what happens if instead of row number 3 having a 99.6, I change this to an A? Notice how count A still says 100, but count dropped to 99. So remember, count, what it does is that it counts all the cells that have numeric values in it. Because this is a letter, it's not counting it anymore. But count A will count anything that is not empty. So it doesn't matter if it has a numeric value or if it has a letter or just a symbol, etc. It will count it. So that's why you see that here we still have what, 100, and then this dropped to 99. Okay, let's put it back as it was. The other thing that we can do is add things depending on some condition. So we see here that the country says that the people that took the test were either in Canada or in the US. The thing that we want to do now is make sure that we add things or add the grades only if they are in Canada, and then add the grades only if they are in the US. To do this, we have SUMIF. So SUMIF, what you do is first you need to select column C, for instance, and say if these people are in Canada, and remember to fix your cell, then sum everything that is here. And it brings you back the value 4071. Now we can do the same here and say SUMIF, but instead of being Canada, now we will use the USA. And you say if this column you find that something says USA, then add the values in this column. So we have a value of 4007. This is how we use conditions inside sums. Count also has a COUNTIF. COUNTIF, but this only gives us one range and one criteria. So here we can only say count this, count the number of cells that we have if they have the word Canada in it. So we have 50 of them. And again, count if in this cells, and you can choose the range here, our cells say USA. And press F4 again, close the parenthesis, and again we have 50 and 50. So yes, we have 50 grades that say Canada, and we have 50 grades in this table which say USA, and all of those will give us the 100 values that we have here. Average if a condition is fulfilled, then it will return the average of that condition. So we do average if, and we say, again, we have three things: range, criteria, and the average, or the column that we want to average. So here we select if in this range you find the word Canada and you fix it with F4, then do the average of these grades. And you got back 81.43. You do the same with this one. Average if in this column, if you find the word USA and fix it with F4, then do the average of this column. And it returned an 80.14, which makes sense, correct? Because this sum was lower, so divided by 50 it should give us a lower value, and we can just simply test this. If we divide this by this, it should be the same. And if we divide the SUMIF from Canada, so the 4,000 by 50, we get 81.4. So this and this are the same, this and these are the same, so our formula is working. And then the other thing that we can do is sometimes when we do all these mathematical operations, we get a lot of decimals. So we have the round. The round helps us to have less number of decimals. Here we can say instead of 81.434, just give me one of the decimals. And you can just pull this so that the US also gives you the 80.1. So those are very easy formulas, but also they help you when you have a condition or you only want to count certain things or you only want to add up some things. So these are good formulas to have. Now is a great time to talk about F4 and what this key on your keyboard does. It's very useful if you're doing calculations, and it's something that you should definitely know. So let's imagine here that we have 10 buyers and each of them made a purchase of something for this amount that we see here on column G. So what we want to know is what amount or what percentage is this $10 out of the 390 that is the sum of all of our purchases on column G. So to do that, we just do 10 divided by our 390. And we see that this is the 3%, right? So you would think, okay, so now what I will do is extend this formula to the rest of my cells, and I should be able to see what other percentages I have. But the thing is that Excel doesn't know really that you are trying to divide the rest of your cells by 390. And let me show you what I mean. When you divide 10 by 390, you are dividing this 2 cells. If you go down, you are dividing 26, but Excel goes down with you to the next cell that is below 390. You go to the next cell, 42, and now it's 2 rows below the 390. So when you divide 10 by 390, that's what Excel does. But once you decide to go to the other cell, Excel does the same with you. And so it goes down and down and down. So what you need to ensure is that this number, 390, stays the same throughout your calculations. In order to do that, you use F4. So you just click somewhere here in your D14 cell or in the cell that you want to make sure that it stays fixed, and you press F4. Now you see that the dollar signs appeared before the column and before the row. So now what it says is my column G and my row 14 will stay the same for the rest of my calculations whenever I drag this. So now we see the results of this. We have 3%, 7%, 11%, etc. And when you see what is inside, you see that it doesn't matter that you went down on the cells of the column G. Column G 14 stays the same because you fixed it, or you set it to be the same throughout your calculation with the help of F4. What it wouldn't make sense, for instance, is for you to also do that with J4, because what you want to do is divide this by the total, and then this by the total, this by the total, this by the total, etc. So if you fix this cell, and let's do that exercise, let's click here in G4, and you do enter, and you pull this down, you will see that now everything says 3%, because as you went down, Excel, what it did is that it said, oh no, you asked me to stay on cell G4. So I stayed there. And you also asked me to stay on cell G14. So all of your cells here in this column H now reflect the same operation, because both of the values you fix them with F4. So let's take this out. Again, click somewhere here. Press F4 again. If you do that, you see that the dollar sign disappeared from the front of column G. So now you can move the column and the column will move, but the row will always be row 4. If you press F4 again, you will see that now the column is fixed. So it doesn't matter where you drag or pull your calculations. The column G will always stay the same, but the row would be able to change. And if you press F4 once more, the dollar signs are gone altogether. So now you can pull the information down, or you can put it across and it will move through columns and then through rows as well. So this is what we want for now. And we can pull this down again and we see the values. Now, to make sure that this is correct, let's auto sum. And it says, yes, this is 100% of your purchases, where buyer number 1 did a 3% purchase and buyer number 2 a 7%, etc. So now you're able to see through percentages who made the biggest purchase. And that's why F4 is super important. And that is why you hear that we say, make sure to fix this throughout our tutorial. So going into formulas, knowing that you have to use F4 is important, but now you know why. Now that we took a look at the key F4 on your keyboard, let's talk about the function IFERROR. If you see here in this table, what I am doing is I'm dividing each of these numbers by each of these numbers. So I'm dividing the 2 by 0, I'm dividing the 5 by 0, and these are the results that I'm getting. So an error, because as you know, we cannot divide by 0. But then on this column, I'm dividing all of these numbers by 5, and then in this next column O, I'm dividing all of these numbers by 2. Because this is displaying an error, I don't want this to show if I send this table or even if I work with it, but I can change the error message. So to do that, we use the function IFERROR. So what you do is you type IFERROR, and you say if my formula 1 divided by 0, and remember to press F4 here so that as you go down, your number 0 stays as the divisor. So you say, if this formula that I am typing is an error, then display instead a space. So you put your space in quotation marks, and then you close it, and you can pull this down, and you will see that now, even though the formula still exists here, and you can see it, it's not displaying anything but that space that you added. The beauty of this is the formula is still here. So if there is a reason that I should change the 0 to something else like a 1, now I would get the results. If I change it to 5, I get the results, etc. Right? The other thing is you don't necessarily have to put a space. You can add whatever you want. So whatever error you want displayed there. So instead of saying a space, you can just type and divide by 0. And so the person knows, oh, maybe they made a mistake or something. Oh yeah, I cannot divide by 0. Okay, so let's divide by 1. So that's how you use IFERROR. And also, this is an example of when you should use F4. So as we move forward with more functions and more formulas and calculations, we will be using F4 a lot. And I hope that this is useful information for you. Let's imagine that someone sent me this table and they are asking us to complete 4 tasks. The first one is add the seniority of each employee. So they want to know how many years they've been in the company. Then add their location, either the headquarters or a branch. And the third thing is send a gift to everyone who is here in Canada and that has been in the company for 5, 10, or 15 years. Finally, let me know what their salary level is. And here we have this table with the salary levels, either high, medium, or low. So to begin with, we will go and take a look at VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP, what it does is that you tell the table Go and search for this value of Carla Brown in this other table. So I'm the owner of these other table, right? I have all this information, and that's why I'm able to fill the other table. So I'm bringing whatever I have here in my table to the other one that the person sent me. Here in this one, I have the employee, the first name, last name, country, city, the office, the department, birth month, salary, and seniority. So I know that the first task is they are asking me how many years have they've been in the company. So they are looking for the seniority. So I already said, okay, so go and search for this value. Yes. In this table, wherever it might be. So we need to select the full table. And then you use F4. So when you chose F4, you see the signs or dollar signs appear before the column and before the row. What it does is that you will always work within this columns and within this rows. The table will never change. So you want to fix the table so that whenever you make a search, it's always within this area. Then you add a comma, and you need to count the numbers. So they are searching for the seniority, which is column J, but Excel, what it needs is to know the number of the column. So employee is number 1, first name is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we bring in column 10, and if not, then it'll return a not available. So here, if you see, we asked Excel, go and look up Carla Brown somewhere in my source table. And when you find her, bring me the value that she has in this column, which is column 10. So when we take a look at our table, this returned a 5. So we see Carla Brown, seniority is 5 years. If we go to our source table and search for Carla Brown, we will see her here, and her seniority is 5 years. So we know that the formula is working. Now we double click and it auto-populates the rest of the cells. And we can check another one, maybe Carla Lima. She's been 3 years in the company. So now we go here and we see she's the next one, 3 years. Okay, so everything in VLOOKUP is working. Now we answered question number 1 or task number 1, where they said add the seniority of each employee. Now we have it here. Now we have task number 1 done and complete. The other thing that they are asking is, let me know if they are either in the headquarters or in a branch. So we know that everyone that is in Toronto is in the headquarters, and everyone that is in a different city is in a branch. So we can use the if statement. So for if, what it does is that we can say, okay, we need to take a look at the city. If the people are in Toronto, then put headquarters, but if they aren't, put a branch. So that's exactly what we do with the if statement. If the city equals Toronto, then return headquarters. But if it's something else that it's not Toronto, then return branch. And here you see that because our cell C3 equals Toronto, then we have the value HQ. So now when we replicate this, we see Sao Paulo, Rome, Jacksonville, etc. These others are branch, but every one of these cells that fulfill the statement of being in Toronto are now set to headquarters. So that's what if does. You tell it, if this condition is fulfilled, then return this value. If it's not, then give me this other one. Now we will see the other formulas, which are called nested formulas. Nested formulas mean we are combining a formula within a formula. We'll start with the task number 3. Task number 3, what it says is send a gift to everyone in Canada that has a seniority of 5, 10, or 15 years. So if we need to break up this thing in sections to understand it better, we can say we'll use an or, right? We need to know if they've been in the company either 5, 10, or 15 years. So let's do this. 5, 10, or 15 years. So we know we need an or here. The other thing that they are saying is if they are in Canada, so we need an and, because they need to be in Canada to get the gift, but they also need to fulfill either having been in the company for 5, 10, or 15 years. So both conditions here need to be achieved for us to send a gift. And then finally, we use the if. Remember that if is, if this condition is fulfilled, then do this thing. If it isn't, then don't. If both conditions are true, then yes, send a gift. If it isn't, then don't send a gift. Okay, so now to the formula. How would you translate this into the formula? Let's start with or, so it is easier. The more you use the formulas, the better you will get at just typing it directly without having to perhaps break it down first into sections. But for now, let's start with or. So we say, we first need to fulfill that the seniority, our cell D3, equals either 5, or it equals 10, or it equals 15. Okay, that's our first section. Remember in Excel, all the formulas start with the word. So here you will see or, and then all of the function inside the parentheses. You'll have and all the things inside the parentheses, if, and then the parentheses, VLOOKUP, etc. Like all the formulas start always with the name of the formula and then all of the conditions or clauses or content inside the parentheses. So here we already have our or formula. The other thing that we need to do is now we need to add an and. So we say, okay, and if, remember, looking at this table, they need to be in Canada and they need to fulfill the condition of seniority, right? So we have and, we already have the seniority here, but now the other thing that we need to make sure happens is that their country equals Canada. So now we have the and in there. The only thing that we are missing is what will happen when these two conditions are fulfilled. That's why we use if. So now with if, we say, if these two things are true, then yes, send a gift. If they are not true, then don't send a gift. And that completes our formula. Now we see that because our cell C3 says Toronto, we will be sending a gift. They are in Canada, right? We double click and then we see here, okay, so we are not sending anything to people in the US, we are not sending gifts to people in Brazil or France, etc. We just said the people that are here in Canada. So all of the Canadas, if we filter this, all of the people in Canada should be set to yes if they have been in the company either 5, 10, or 15 years. The rest should say no. Okay. Now let's talk about the if within an if, or the nested if. If you remember, if what it does is you tell it, if this condition is true, then bring this value, like value number 1. And if it isn't, then give me this other value. So that is what the if formula does. Here in task number 4, they are asking you indicate their salary level. The salary level, if it's above 100, it will be high. If it's between 60 and 99, it will be medium, and if it's below 59, it's a low salary level. The first thing that we will do is bring the salary to this table just to use it for now. We won't send this information back to the person that sent us this table because it's something that they probably shouldn't see, right? But for now, because we know how to use the VLOOKUP formula, we will do that. So we go again and say, look for Carla Brown in your source table. And again, you need to select the full table and press F4. So once I press F4, you will see that the dollar signs will appear here. And again, what it does is that it fixes your area. So this won't move. It will always search for your values within this table. The other thing is you add a comma. And now, because you need to bring back the salary, you need to count again which number of column is salary in. Employee is number 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this time it's column 9 and false, right? We have here our 115, and we just replicate this for the rest of them. So now we have our salaries here. In order to use the if, what we are going to do is, again, take a look at this and say, if this salary is above 100, then say it's high. Again, I will put the dollar signs in so this never moves and it always works with this cell. Then what we say, if it isn't, what should happen? The problem that we have here is that if only allows or returns 2 values depending on what happens with this one. But still, you need to tell the person if it is a medium or a low salary. So you still have 2 more values. So what you need to do is then add another if. And now again, you say, now if this salary is below 59, then return low, and we will fix this again with F4. And if it is something else, then return this medium value. And remember to fix this again. You close the parenthesis. You're closing the first set of parentheses. You will see here that it has a red color. So now the first set is closed, but you also have this other parenthesis, so don't forget to close that one. When you hit enter, you will see that this 115 is above 100, so it's considered a high level. So when you press this, you get the rest of them, and you can check Michael Curry. It says medium salary because it's between 60 and 99. Yes, it's a 64. So everything here now tells you the salary level. What we did is we broke down this second value into 2 more. So that's why we use the if. We said if the salary is above 100, yes. If our condition here was if it's above 100, then return high. But because here we needed 2 more, we needed to say still if it was medium or low, we had to break the second one into another if so that we could return 2 more values, either medium or low. And that is how we use nested ifs. Don't forget to get rid of the information that you shouldn't be sending back in the table. But because this is still formulas, you have to make sure that you first convert all these formulas to values. So make sure to copy them and then just paste them as values. So now instead of being the VLOOKUPs and the ifs and the ands, etc., you now see that it's only values here. 5, it says HQ, no, etc. And now you can get rid of all this information. So get rid of everything that they didn't send you. Now you can save this and send it back to the person that asked you to fill this information in. So thank you. That's it for me. I hope that the information, the functions and formulas that I shared are useful for you and that my delivery was clear. And now I will hand it over to Laura. She has prepared a lot of information and great tips for pivot tables. So Laura.
Thank you, Nayely. Hi, everybody. So now we are going to continue with formulas. Now I'm going to show you a SUMIF, and after that I'm going to explain to you some things related to pivot tables. So I'm going to share my screen right now. So you should be seeing my screen. So now continuing with the formulas, I'm going to explain to you one formula. This is called SUMIFS. So as Nayely explained, it's similar to SUMIF, but this one you can have more than one criteria. So with SUMIF, you only have one, but with this one, you can have multiple criteria. So it works the same way than SUMIF, but you are going to have more options to select. So you have the sum range, that it means what are you going to add or what are you going to sum. The criteria range is where is your criteria. So for example, in destination, I want Boston. So my criteria range is my column G because it's where I'm going to find Boston. And my criteria is Boston, right? And criteria 2, for example, the transport was going to be, I don't know, truck 4. So the criteria range is transport, my column, and my criteria is truck. So this is the things that we need to create the SUMIFS formula. So now let's say that I have this table, which represents my orders, my order number, the date that what the order was done, the driver's name, like who is transporting this order, the item, what type of item, like TV, a microwave, or a washing machine, how many items, right? Like 25 TVs, for example. The type of transportation was truck 1, 2, 3, 4, or airplane, and the destination. So where my items are going or went. So here, for example, I have a question, say, some of microwaves transported to New York. So it's asking me how many microwaves were transported to New York. So I have two criteria, right? So I have microwaves, so a type of item, and I have also New York destination. So I cannot use SUMIF only because I have more than one criteria. So to use this, so again, so equal sign or plus sign, SUMIF. So just double click in SUMIF and it's going to give you what are the variables that you need. So my sum range, so what I want to add, so I want to know the number of items. So number of items, so I select my column. And after that, comma, my criteria range. So where is my criteria 1? So microwave is in column D, item. So I just click here. And after that, we can select or type our first criteria. So microwave, so I can select the word microwave in here, comma, and my criteria 2 is New York. So destination, column G, and comma, so what is my criteria? New York. So in this case also, I can select the column here, or also I can type my criteria. So I have to, anything that is not number, so I have to put it a quotation mark. So quotation mark, so we have now two options. You can select the criteria or you can type the criteria. So the solution is 25. So 25 items, microwaves were transported to New York. So now let's do this. So some items transported to Boston by truck 4. So I have again two criteria: Boston the destination and the transport, truck 4. So to do that, so again, sum if s. So sum range is I want to know the number of items, comma. Criteria range, so my first one is Boston. So Boston is in here, destination. So I select this one. Again, I can just select it or type it. So let's say that I want to type this one. So Boston, it doesn't matter if capital letters or lowercase. It's just that the structure has to be the same. But it doesn't matter like lower cases or upper cases. Criteria 2 is truck 4. So my truck 4 is here in transport. And let's say that here, instead of type, I want to select it because it's easier. And close the parentheses. So here's my formula, and it's saying 50. So 50 items were transported to Boston by truck 4. So the last question is sum of item order between February 3rd, 2013 and February 6th, 2013. So I have two criteria, right? So some orders equal or higher than February 3rd and orders less or equal than February 6th. So I have two criteria, but the range is the same. The criteria range is the same. So how to do this? So sum if s. So my sum range is still sum of items, so number of items, comma. My criteria range is the order date, right? So order date. And here, as I told you before, anything that is a non-number, so we have to put quotation mark. So this one is a date, so I just want to say quotation mark, and I want this order to be equal or higher than February 3rd, 2013. So equal, sign equal, and sign, sorry, higher and equal of 2013 0203. So here is really important that you have to follow the same formatting of your date as you see here. So I have year, month, and date. So the same formatting than my column here, year, month, date. If you don't follow the same structure of formatting, it's going to give you a different result. It's going to give you nothing, right? So you make sure that you have the same formatting in your column, the date formatting. Date formatting is really important because sometimes you have date first, month, and then at the end year. So make sure that you have the correct formatting when typing here. Again, so this one higher than February 3rd. And my second criteria is again dates, orders, so range here, but orders that are less or equal than 2013 0206. So close quotation marks. And now 309 items were ordered between those dates. So this is sum if. Now let's go to pivot tables. So for pivot tables, I'm going to give you like I'm going to explain to you what is a pivot table, what is the structure of the pivot table. I'm going to give you some tips before creating a pivot table. I'm going to explain to you how to create a pivot table, and after that, we're going to do some exercise together, and we're going to show you some tips. So a pivot table is a custom created summary of your data or spreadsheet. You can aggregate your information and show you a new perspective, like a new point of view based on your organizations and field selection. So the pivot table is structured. So there are three areas of the pivot table. So one here is the pivot table fields where you can select your columns, like you can select your fields. So here is the same names of your column in your spreadsheet. So the area number 2 is the where and how your information is going to be shown in your pivot table. So if you put here your field and filter, so it's going to be shown as a filter and you're going to be able to filter it. If here in columns, if you put the party in columns, it means that your party is going to be shown in columns. Rows means that your data here, your fields are going to be showed as rows. And values are your metrics, like what are you going to do? Are you going to add? Are you going to sum? Are you going to show as average? So this is your metrics, what you want to do. And the section 3 is the result of section 1 and 2. So here when you're putting your fields in section 2, it's going to update this portion and you're going to be able to see right away the result of your organization. So before to create a pivot table, first make sure that each column has a meaningful heading and there is no blank in there. There is no blank titles. Why? Because as I told you before, here section 1 is going to migrate, or is going to have the same titles as your columns. So for example, if your column is called A, and A means that is the name of the employee, so it's not going to be easy for you to know A is name of the employer, B is the last name, D is the hire date, C is the department, right? Because you are not going to remember that by heart. And it's going to be worse if you have a lot of columns. So my tip is your heading has to be meaningful. They don't need to be that long, but at least it has to be something easy for you to know, okay, that is the information that I have in that column. So secondly, verify your columns are properly formatted for the data type. So if you have dates, make sure that the data type is dates. If you have names, anything that is text related, make sure that is text. And everything that is numbered, like, I don't know, like years, experience years, and something like that, make sure that they are formatted as number. Also, and third, before to start the pivot table, make sure that you have on your top of mind the structure that you want to build in the pivot table. It will help you to map where to put your fields in this section number 2. So if you have a structure, you will know, okay, I'm going to move one specific field to columns, the other specific field to rows, right? Because you have a structure in your mind. So let's say that you're helping on the election process and you need to know how many voting cards of each party you need to take by district. So in other words, what I'm asking is how many voters are by party and district. So without seeing the data, without knowing anything at all, so you know that you need party, right? Because I'm asking you how many voting cards by party, so party. The district, because you need to take those cards into specific districts. You need the count, number of voters. You need to know how many cards of each party you need to take for each district. So you know this, so those are the variables that you have in your mind. And the way that I structure this is, okay, I want to know parties in columns, and I want to know district in rows, and each combination should have their number of voters or the number of cards, right? So this is what I want to do. This is my pivot table. So now let's see the data of the pivot table. So we go here to voters data. You are going to see the data of the pivot table. So where you are going to see the voter ID, the party of this voter, the district, and with this voter goes, the age group of this person, the last date that this person voted, years that this voter has been registered, and the ballot status. So I want to create a pivot table with this structure: party in columns, district in rows, and the number of voters. So let's start creating the pivot table. So to create a pivot table, click anywhere in the data set, click Insert, Pivot Table, and it's going to select automatically the pivot table. You have two options, new worksheet or existing worksheet. When you click existing worksheet, you can select anywhere that you can include it. Like maybe I want to create a pivot table here in this tab, or I want to create a pivot table in another tab, let's say, so you have to select it. I don't want to create a pivot table in a specific worksheet, so I'm just going to delete this, and I want to create a new worksheet, meaning that it's going to create a new tab. So click OK, and now I have my new worksheet. So to keep my work organized, I'm just going to rename this. So right click in here in the tab, and it's going to say rename. So it's going to say pivot table PT Q1, question 1. So here you see, if you are outside the pivot table, the fields are going to disappear, but if you click again inside the pivot table, you are going to be able to see your fields. So what I want is district at the rows, right? Because that was my structure that I created. And I want also party in columns, right? So I just drag down my fields to each area. And the border, I want my border to be the count. So I just drag down these to the values because I want to count the IDs, the border IDs. So by default, it's going to sum because it sees like they are numbers, but they are not really actual numbers to sum. I want to count the border ID. So click here, value fields settings, and here select count, and OK. So now we have the count of voters by party and district. So it's the same that we have here, but now with the actual data. So now we know how to create a pivot table. So now let's practice some questions. So here what I have done to save time, I already created the pivot table. So what I want you to do is just to play with these fields to answer this question. So the question is, how many voters are by age range, by district, and by party? So in the workshop, we had time to do, I gave you time to solve this by your own, but in this time, if you want to do it by your own again, just stop me or pause me and do it by your own. And after that, you can review it. So now let's do this. How many voters are by age range, by district, and by party? So I know that it's asking me those fields, age range, so age group, okay. If I don't know where to put it, my advice is to put everything in rows, and after that you can move it and select it. But before, just trying to keep to organize in your mind how you want to do it, right? As I said before, it's easier to have a structure in mind. So my structure is going to be like this way. So age range, district, okay, rows. And let's see party. So let's see how party looks here in columns. Okay, so I'm going to have party in columns, rows, age group, and the district. Okay, so what I'm missing is how many voters. So I need to have a voter count. So go here, count, and now I have age range and district and by party. So I know that in the Democrat, there are two people that the voters between 18 to 20, and those voters are in District 24 of 6 and District 24, 18, and so on. So this is a way that I will do it, but also maybe, for example, you want to see in this way, right? So if you want to see by district that you want to do analysis and you want to analyze those districts. So for me, I prefer to have like more rows than columns. So that's why I prefer this way. Instead of having like a wider pivot table, I prefer like a long pivot table. In those cases, because it's district. So I prefer just analyzing by party. So that is like my point of view, but it depends on you how you want to see it. Okay, So based on this answer, we're going to use this report layout. We're going to check what it means report layout. So to see the different layouts that Excel gives you to show the pivot table, so click anywhere in the pivot table, go to design, and here go to report layout. So there are three options to report layout. So by default, Excel is going to show you the pivot table or create the pivot table in compact form. So compact form is the way that you see here, where the row label are in different rows. So you see here, this is an age group and this is district, and they are under different rows, but they are under the same column, right? So you identify that this age group is because it's in a different row and is bolded, and this one is because it's not bolded, so you know there is a different field, right? And also here the subtotals are at the top, but it doesn't say subtotal, so you just understand that those ones are subtotal. Here you don't have like a fields heading, so it's telling you row levels, column levels, but you don't know which one. So the only way to know here is because you read the titles in those areas. In columns and rows is because you know it, but otherwise it's hard to say. So this one is the less that I like, really. I don't use that much. Outline form, so now it was similar than the previous one with some changes. So the obvious change is now each row field has its own column. So you see here, before we have this age group at the top, now is beside that because it has its own column. And also we notice here that we see the fields names. Now I know that this is age group, I know this is party, and still my subtotals are at the top without saying subtotal. So that one is fine. Your pivot table is going to be wider, right? Because now each field is going to have its own column. And the last one, report layout, is shown tabular form, which is my favorite. The difference here is now you see each of them still, they are under different rows, like age group and district, different column, but they are under the same row, right? Before they were under different row. So here what you're going to have is you are going to have less rows because they are going to be under the same. So every time you are going to have one row, one less row. So it's going to be, you are going to optimize your rows. And now the subtotals are at the bottom of each group. Before it was at the top, now are at the bottom. And they say total. So now it's easy to see, okay, this is the total of this group, right? So that's why this one is my favorite and the most common that I use. Okay, so now let's continue doing some exercise. So here again, I created a pivot table. You just need to play with the fields to organize and arrange them in the proper way. And the question is, which districts have the most Democrats? So again, if you want to do it and try by your own, stop me, pause the video, and once you are done, see the answer. But now we are going to create the answer of this question. So the question is which district? So you know districts is a field that you need. So district, so I start always with rows. I prefer to have like a list and the rows that the columns, for me is easier to see. So district, so I need district, so I just put this in rows. Have the most Democrats. So Democrats means that it's a party type. So let's say party, I put party in columns. Okay. and which district have the most Democrats. So it's asking me the most. So the most is like a higher number of, right? So a count, higher number of voters. So I need to count how many voters in order to know which one is the highest number. Again, I change it to count. Okay. So to know the higher number, the highest number by party, so what I can do is here, I can filter by party. So here I'm going to filter by Democrat. So select Democrat, and now I'm just going to have Democrats. As you see here, the order is by district, so it's ascending order by district, but I want to have a descending order by a count of voters, right? So to do that, just click anywhere in Democrats, in the count of voters of Democrats. So click anywhere. Right click now and select sort, and we want to see sort largest to smallest. So here click, and now it's sorted by largest to smallest. So that district that has the highest number of Democrats is 2417, and the second one is 2418. So another way to do that is, I'm going to show you another way to do that. So I'm going to copy this pivot table, so you can have multiple pivot tables in the same tab. So I'm just going to Control C, Control V, and now I'm just going to create a new pivot table here, or arrange a new pivot table. So the other way that I can do this is because I only want Democrats, it means that I'm going to sort or filter by Democrats. So I can use my party as a filter, right? And here I just select Democrat. And okay. Again, the order is by district, so I want the order to be by voter. So right click in the voters, anywhere in the voter, sort, and click here, sort largest to smallest. And again, the answer is the same. 2417 is the first one in both places, but it's a different way to do it, right? It's up to you how you want to do it. Okay, let's continue practicing pivot tables. So now I have a new set of data. So here I have a roller coaster, so type of ride. I have the amusement park, which this roller coaster is, the type of the ride, if it's steel or if it's wood, the design is flying, sit down, inverted, the status, if it's operating or not, when was open, and speed, like mile per hour, right? So I have all this information about this ride, and I want to answer this question. So convert the roller coaster data into a pivot table. So it's telling me create a pivot table and find the overall average speed. So the overall average speed of all rides that satisfy the following criteria: the type of the ride, still, the design of the ride, sit down, and the amusement park has to have the word adventure somewhere in the title. Okay, so we know that we need to create a pivot table first. So let's go one by one, create a pivot table first. So how to create a pivot table? So if you want again to do this by your own, pause the video. Okay, so to answer this, go to the data, click anywhere, right? Insert, pivot table. I want to create a new worksheet. Yes. So now I created my pivot table. So I'm going to rename it again just to keep my work organized. So pivot table question 4. Again, so what is the question? Create a pivot table and find the overall average speed. Overall average speed is telling me my metric. So my metric is speed. So it means that my metric is my values. So I just write down these two values, and it's asking me average speed. So again, by default, Excel is giving me a sum, but I don't want a sum. So again here, value field settings, and I search by average. So I want this metric to be an average. So, okay. And after that, what is asking me of all rights? Okay, so it's giving me, I need this field rights. So roller coaster is the right. So if I don't have a structure yet, so I put this in rows. Okay, it's telling me like the average speed by right. Perfect. That satisfy the following criteria. The type is still. Okay, so I need the field type. And let's say that I want to filter that, right? Because it's telling me still, so I can do this filter is still. Perfect. And now the design is sit down. So again, I need the field design. So let's say that I'm going to put this in columns, design, sit down. Okay, so I select sit down. And the other question, other part is the amusement part has the word adventures. So amusement part, so I bring amusement part here in rows. So here I'm going to change something. So an amusement park has different rides, right? So the wider group, like the bigger group, is the amusement park, and the smallest group is roller coaster, right? Because an amusement park can have several different numbers of roller coasters, not the other way around, right? So to make this pivot table make sense, so the bigger group is going to be at the top, right here, and the roller coaster is going to be at the bottom. The same here, the bigger group is going to be at the top, the smaller group is going to be at the bottom. In that way, we create an appropriate structure of the pivot table. So now it's telling me, okay, I needed amusement park that has the word adventure. So I just broke the amusement park field in rows and organized in that correct way. And I'm going to filter by adventure. So click here because you're going to filter row labels and you're going to filter adventure. Anything that says adventure. So, okay. So we know now that those two rides have meet the whole criteria, and the overall average of those rides is 43.5 miles per hour and 28 miles per hour. This is one way to do it. For example, another way to do it, if you want to think another ways, so you can do also design instead of being columns. You can put design here also in filters, and you are going to see average speed by right also. You want to put the amusement park in here is also valid, but in this case, you are not going to be able to see what is the amusement park. So in that part, in that portion, I wouldn't remove the amusement park from here. So this is like the two options to solve this pivot table or to solve this question. Okay, so now let's start with the tips. So now we know how to create a pivot table. We have done some exercise. So I'm just going to show you some tips. Let's assume that I have done an analysis of how many years in average people have been registered for a specific party. So I have done here party and average years of registration by person, right? So I have here this analysis, but let's say here that in my data, what I use to create my pivot table, let's say that I forgot to include a voter, right? So, I noticed that I don't find voter 5163, so I forgot to put it in my table, right? Because we're doing an analysis in average, if we include a two, if we include number two only in 4,000 records, it's not going to do any difference, right? So in order to make sure that my pivot table is refreshing, I'm going to create a crazy number to make sure that it's refreshing. So here, what I see here is to refresh that pivot table, go to the pivot table, right click, refresh, and we see that nothing is happening. Okay, why? Because what I need to do to include a new number is pivot table, change data source, and you see now it's from 1 to 4001, but I included my new row in 4002. So every time I have to go here and change those things and click OK. I don't want to do that all the time, right? Because every time I have to include a new data, I have to do the same. So I don't want to do that. So what I suggest to do is, you know that maybe your table, your data set, it's going to keep growing all the time. What you can do is group your data set and create a table. So how to do that? So click anywhere in your data set, click Insert, Table, and here it's going to select your range of the pivot table. And check mark my table has headers. Yes, because I have here titles. It's okay. And now is a table, so a group of data. So here I change my name, borders, table. Here I change the name of the table. And now what I'm going to do is include my new record that I forgot before, 51, 63. Again, let's say there is a crazy number, to make sure that it's refreshing. So I just go to my pivot table, right click, refresh, and now it's refreshing. So this works anytime that you have to create, or you have to add a new data or a new record. So you don't have to worry about all the time changing the source, right? So this is a good tip to practice if you know that your data set is dynamic, that is going to keep growing all the time. Second tip, blanks. So here I have done an analysis by district and party, how many voters are by district and party. And let's say that you want to send this analysis, but maybe this person, the person who has seen this, is not that familiar with pivot tables, with reports. So this person may ask, like, okay, why this one is blank? Is something wrong, or something that you erased by mistake? Like, this person wants to make sure that there is data in here. So the reason that it's blank is because there is no data that meet the criteria. So there are no voters, there are no American independent voters in District 2401. And this is what your pivot table is showing you. But maybe you want to make it like easier and direct, that there is no data in there, right? So what we can do is, instead of showing blanks, we can just show an A, like no apply. There is no data in there at all, right? So what we can do to do that is click anywhere in the pivot table, right click, and go to pivot table options. Here it should be check mark this. So for empty cell show, so it should be mark. And I want to show an A. So I just enter or type what I want to show. So, okay. And now it's showing an A instead of blank. So now it's easy, understandable, and we know for sure that there are no mistakes or there are no errors and that we deleted something. So it is an easy tip, and you can replace whatever you want for blanks. Okay, for the third tip, I'm going to introduce a new data set. So we have in this data set ID, like employee ID, the position of the employee, the department of that employee, the age group, like of this employee, the hiring date, when was the employee hired, years of experience of that employee, the status, permanent, temporal, contractor, the education level, college, below college, if doctor, master, or bachelor, and the monthly salary of the employee. So let's say that I have done an analysis based on this data. I have done an analysis of position and average year of experience. So I know here for in the healthcare representative have an average 11 years of experience, right? Among all employees. let's say that I have like a long list, I don't know, like more positions, and I want to know sales positions with more than 12 years experience. I know that it's easy to see here because we have like a small pivot table, so you can identify, okay, those ones are the sales positions, and this one is the only one that have more than 12 years. But let's say that we have like a super long list, and you just want to use filters, right? Because it's easier. So, okay, so I'm going to filter by sales. So I just type sales. Anything that has in the name sales is going to be captured. So, okay, or enter. And now I want to filter by average years of experience. So I want to filter by values. So I just go into value filters and anything that is greater, higher than 12. So I just enter 12 and okay. So now my sales filter is erased or wipe out. So what happened? Well, Excel by default has only one filter on, but there is a solution. We can check or we can turn on the multiple filters. So to do so, what you can do is click anywhere in the pivot table, right click. Let's go to pivot table options. Let's go to total and filters. Allow multiple filters, check mark, and okay. So now let's try again. Let's remove all the filters and let's try again. So I want to filter by anything that says sales, type sales and enter. And value filters, anything that is greater than 12 years, enter. Now it's working. Now it's filtering by anything, any position that says sales and any value that is higher than 12. So now it's working. So this is a super great tip to use when you want to have multiple filters in the pivot table. Okay, calculated fields. Calculated fields. So let's say that I have done this analysis, position and monthly salary. So I have done my analysis by month, but let's say that now I want to do analysis by year. So I'm going to check in my data if I have my salary, the salary of my employees by year, right? Because I want to bring this field. So if I go to sales table, where is my data? I see that I don't have any salary by year. So does it mean that I have to create like a column called annual salary and I have to just multiply this by 12 and create a new column? Well, this is one option that you can go and do all these crazy things like going and create a new field, and after that you have to update your pivot table sources because your pivot table is from A to I and now it's going to be from A to J. So it's too much trouble, right? So what we can do, an easy way, faster, is we create a calculated field. So a calculated field is like a new field here, right? You see a field here. It's going to create a new field that meets your requirements. Like you are going to create a formula and it's going to give you the result of that formula, what you put in there. So to create a calculated field, we just click here anywhere in the pivot table analyze. Here fields item sets. So click here in calculated field. So I'm going to call this annual salary. And my formula is going to be, okay, how I'm going to calculate the annual salary. So it's the monthly salary multiplied by 12. 12 times my monthly salary. So, okay. And now I have my annual salary without creating like a new column in my data, without calculating one by one. It was fast and easy. And now let's say that I want to do an annual increase of 10% of the salary, right, for all my employees. So I just want to know, okay, what will be the impact? So what we can do is, again, create a calculated field and say projection, like 10% increase projection, right? So click anywhere in the pivot table, fields item, calculated field. Again, 10% increase is the name of my field. And the interesting thing and the cool thing is you can use your calculated field, like the field that you created, you can use it to create a new field. So what I'm going to use is my annual salary. So because I already calculated that, and I'm going to assign the increase. So the increase is 1.1 multiplied by 1.1. So click OK. And now my salary with the 10% increase is 36 million in sales executive versus 33 millions nowadays. So this is super interesting to use, and I encourage you to use when you need to do any analysis. You can use those calculated fields. Tip number 5, which is almost the last one. So slicer. So slicers are fancy filters that you can use to make your reports prettier, right? So if you want to impress your boss or your colleagues or your coworkers or somebody, put slicers in your data in your pivot tables, and they can select any data that they or any filters that they want to use. So they can do it by their own, super easy, and in a graphic way and beautiful way, I will say. So here I have done analysis again, position and monthly salary. But let's say that I want to do an analysis by status, education level, and hiring date. So I want to filter that. So I want to be able to see the differences, and I want to see those criteria, right? So what I do to create the slicers is click anywhere in the pivot table, click pivot table analyze, and here you are going to have two options: insert slicer and insert timeline. Slicer is for any data that is no date, and timeline is for date. So here I want to do a filter by status and education level. So insert slicer, and it's asking me to do by status and education level. So click OK, and now it's showing me those fancy filters. So those buttons that I can just click, and it's going to change my data, you see? So it's changing my data based on the criteria that I assigning. So let's say that you want to select contractors and permanent. So it's not allowing you, like what happened? What you need to do is just click here to allow multiple selections. Click, and now you can select contractors and permanent workers. And education level, the same. So you want to select multiple criteria, click here, and you are going to be able to select multiple options. If you want to remove the filter, just click here, and it's going to remove the filter, and the same here. And now let's say that I'm going to include the hiring date, right? Because I want the hiring date to be a filter. But instead of using a slicer, it makes sense to use a timeline, right? Because it's going to look better in a timeline. It's going to be easier to see. So you can also filter, so you can move this if you want to select a period of time, right? Or in that way, so we have like a lot of hiring dates, so it's like a super big range. But if you want a specific time, also just click there. It means that in January 2019, no employees were hired. So you have to find, for example, the specific period, you can have the specific range. So those ones are fancy filters, are really useful. It makes your pivot tables look prettier and maybe more professional. And the last tip is show values as. So show values as is easier way. So instead of creating a calculated field, right, is something that you can do faster than a calculated field. So I was saying that calculated field is fast and easy, so show values as is even easier and faster. So those show values as is when you need to do, for example, percentage, that you want to see what is the representation of certain groups in versus the total, right? Instead of creating the formula of please divide this number divided by the total to see the percentage of representation. So instead of creating this field with that formula, you can use this show values as. So I'm going to show you how to do this. So let's say, for example, here that I have my analysis of education level by monthly salary, right? And I want to show and I want to know how much does the bachelor people are earning versus the total salary of their company by month. So I want to see what is the representation, right? So what I'm going to do is, instead of using the calculating field, so we're going to use show values as. So right click here in the values field. So right click here, show values as, and you are going to see different options, like percentage for grand total, percentage of column total, like different options. And really here the option is asking you that you are going to do this comparison against what. So what I'm going to do is the comparison between this against the grand total, right? So again, let's go to show values. And what I want to compare is against percentage of grand total. So I select this one, grand total. So now I see that my salary, my monthly salary of bachelor people is 20% versus a total company salary by month. But you're saying, okay, it's 20% of what? 20% of 1 million, 20% of 10 million, or 30% of what? So if you want to see your values also, what you can do is here select the monthly salary and put it back in the values. And now you are going to see the percentage, right? But also you're going to be able to see the salary. So now you see, okay, you have both if you want to do like an analysis. So now let's say that I now increase my report or my analysis, including the position. So now I know how much the sales executive and bachelor, like bachelor sales executive, earns against the whole company. So I know that the sales executive, bachelor sales executive, earns 500,000, and the total salary of the company is 9 million by month, right? And let's say, I don't know, I want to know what is the percentage against, like, what is the percentage or what is the representation of these people against the total salary, because maybe I want to do an increase for them because they're asking for, and I want to know what is going to be the impact in percentage, right? So what I do here is, again, so I'm just going to compare this number against the grand total, right? Because I want to see the whole company. What is the impact of increasing this group? So again, right click, show values as grand total. So now I see my percentages. I know that the bachelor sales executive represents 5.6% of the whole company. So if I'm going to increase the salary, it's going to impact my expenses in 5%. So whatever I do is going to increase more than 5%, right? Okay, so now let's see that I don't want to compare by total of company, but I just want to see what is the percentage of the salary representation of the sales executive among all the bachelor's positions. So I want to know the sales executive salary, how much represents against all the bachelors, right? So this number against this total, right? Because I want to know how much this represents against all the bachelors. So against this total, and this total is in rows. So again, show values as, and I want to compare on total row. So click here. Now what we see is the bachelor sales executive represents the 28% of all the bachelor's employees. And now you see that each row has 100% as total. And also, let's say that I want to see like other way to see it. If I flip it, right? Instead of seeing total by rows, I'm going to see totals by columns. So let's say that I want to see how much a bachelor sales executive represents against or among all the sales executive, regardless the education or all the education levels. So meaning I want to compare this number, bachelor executive, among all the sales executives, so among this number. So what we're going to see is percentage of column total. So now what we're seeing is something that flip. Before I had 100% in my rows, now I have 100% in my columns, because what I'm comparing is bachelor sales executive against the whole sales executive. So this bachelor sales executive represents 19% of all the sales executive. So this is a useful formula, a useful tool, of useful tip to show, like to see percentage and to see your analysis faster and easier. And also, like at the final thing that I would like to add is here we included in our tab, we included the shortcuts. So if you click here, you're going to be able to see the shortcuts on what you like, what we use usually, right? So for example, we have used Control L to select everything, Control C, Control V. So all here you're going to see, and just I will advise just to see the link. And they take one day, for example, to practice one shortcut, and also to practice one of the different tips that we have shared with you. Naji is here.
Hello.
Hi. Okay, so that is all for me. So that was everything like for pivot tables. Yeah.
Thank you again to Hispanotech. Thank you, Laura. We hope we covered everything that you wanted to see. We also encourage you to go and answer the survey, please, because that will allow us to know how we did in this workshop, if we covered what we needed to cover, and also you can give us some feedback to keep on improving our other webinars and workshops. So please, if you have 2 minutes of your time, just go there and answer the survey. So thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Nayely. Bye, everybody. Bye.